Welcome to Season 8, Episode 45 of the Be Conscious podcast. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Noemi Poget. Here we go.
Welcome to the Be Conscious podcast, the show that brings you enlightened perspectives on the frequency of money, life's many challenges, and those heavy feelings that may be holding you back from living your best life. And now your host, Dr. Susan Nicholas.
Noemi joins us today from Estonia by way of Geneva, Switzerland. She has had a successful academic career studying both history and ancient Greek. In addition to her vast language proficiencies, she has been a paramedic, a researcher, and a journalist. And her latest career transition is life coaching. Now, I'm going to allow Noemi to bring us full circle, sharing with us her life changing journey and the catalyst that has ushered her into her current cause of building a fair and peaceful world. Noemi, welcome to the Be Conscious podcast.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm delighted to be here and have this conversation with you.
Noemi, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I was hoping that you could bring the audience and bring me full circle on these vast career transitions in your life and what brings you to what you do today.
Yes. So it's a long story. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. And maybe the first thing I want to say is that don't be afraid of changing career. How many times you need it in your life. For me, it started with studying at the University of Geneva, where I was born, and just doing what I knew I was good at, what I was expected to be good at, which was being a good student. And so I started studying ancient Greek and history, and I loved it. I really loved it. And at the same time, I was feeling that this is beautiful, but it feels disconnected from life outside the university. I was working as a cashier in a supermarket to finance my studies. And for me, the point of studying was to reflect on my time, my world, and use what I could learn through history to make this world a better place for me and also for the people around me. And I was very aware that I was privileged because I had a choice. I was working as a cashier, but it would not be my only option. And I could see the ladies working with me, and for some of them, it was clear that.
That was
Pardon?
it. Yeah, I said that was it. That was the end of their career, was just being the cashier or whatever job
Yes,
that they were doing.
exactly. They had no other option because of how society works. And then I understood later, becoming a life coach, also because of mindset or belief systems that
Mm.
they had and that I shared at that time too. So, so yes, I felt that there was something that you may call a mission that was not there in my studies. And after, like, it was a difficult moment where I was debating with myself and thinking, okay, I have studied so many years, I've started a PhD, I have applied for a grant to go to Oxford, I received the grant, and now I realized that I don't want to do this anymore. And so I felt guilty, I felt ashamed, I felt afraid. And then finally, I also felt like this is my life. I cannot keep doing something that makes me suffocate. So I went to my supervisor and I told him that I wanted to quit. And he got quite upset. But he didn't really have a choice either because I just could not keep doing what I was doing. So I left, started looking for a job, Took me 9 months to find something, and retrospectively, I really understand that it was due to like the beliefs that I had at that time about myself, about what was possible, and a lack of imagination. That was one of the many consequences of those beliefs that I held, and also a lack of confidence. That all this put together explains why it took me so long to get a job. And then when I finally got a job, I was actually really happy. I also felt that I didn't fully deserve it, but I was super excited because I started working as an internal reporter at the headquarters of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva, and that was an extremely interesting working environment with people who had worked on the field in so many different countries, and it was intellectually very stimulating. It also made me question a lot my understanding and relationship to humanitarian work. Why do we do this? Is this a good thing to do? Like all those questions. And at the same time, I had applied to go to the paramedic school, and I got accepted there after 3 months at the headquarters at ICRC. And again, I went through that process of feeling bad, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed, and also feeling called to do something else. So once again, I was in my supervisor's office and saying, well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and now I'm going to do something else. So again, finding the courage to follow what was right for me. And I think at that time, because yes, in parallel to that, I had started doing a lot of inner work. Like I started going to therapy when I was 10 years old because I had panic attacks, like, I don't know, maybe 3 times a day. And so at that time, I had something like 20 years of experience with therapy, not necessarily very satisfying, but I was able to kind of enjoy life at least a little bit. And so it helped me become a little bit more confident. And that confidence helped me um, maybe stand or resist or not care too much about what my environment was telling me, because my family and my friends were saying, well, you're an intellectual, for whatever that word means, but they were using this label for me and saying, you know how to work in a library, you know how to write, but what are you going to do in an ambulance? Some people were telling me I would get bored. Other people were telling me I would not be able to, to cope with what I would see. So everyone had an opinion about how I would react in that job. And well, I will see once I get there. Like, let me study, let me practice, let me do my job, and I didn't get bored. I found ways to cope with what I was seeing. I loved it. It's probably the job that has taught me the most, and where I have been able, or from where I have been able to extract so many uh, skills and practices and habits that I've been able to transfer to other jobs that I had later. Even like there are things that you can take from the work of a paramedic and translate into an office work.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was the first half of the journey, I would say.
You know, Noemi, thank you so much for sharing that. What came up for me as you were speaking was a common thread that ran through your, I would say, early life. And you talked about feeling guilt, feeling ashamed, feeling afraid. And then when you received a job, undeserving. And then you shared with us a little glimpse into your childhood, having panic attacks since age 10, and being in therapy that was unsatisfying to you. Are you willing to share with us a little bit about your formative years, about your family?
Mm-hmm.
What was happening to you as a 10-year-old child? Um, Maybe from the perspective of that 10-year-old girl, and then maybe from now the perspective of a life coach, like having some distance and some awareness around that.
Yes. Um, so I grew up believing and hearing that the outside world was a threatening place and that I was not equipped to go there. So I spent most of my childhood feeling terrified, literally by everything. Um, I could not explain at that time why I had panic attacks. I was just saying, I'm scared. But and when people would ask me, well, I'm scared of what? And I don't know. I just feel this. And it was very, very physical. Like, that I just
Hmm.
literally had to run to the bathroom because I was so scared. Like my entire body was reacting to fear in a very physical way. And
Mm.
um, also not understanding why I was told that the world was dangerous because as a child it was not like that consciously formulated in my mind, but I had this feeling that this is weird because people live in the world, so why is it such a bad place? Why is it so dangerous? Or how come, like, I couldn't really understand what was threatening there because I didn't grow up in a very violent area, for instance, or like in terms of the material safety, I really had everything. So for me, there was something there was an incoherence there that I could not understand because I grew up in terms of material, my environment was very safe. I mean, I lived in a part of the town that was safe. I was going to school. I had friends at school. There was no violence. I mean, it's nothing compared to some places in the world where like violence is a real thing. Where I mean, you live in the US, you have a much more direct experience with the kind with what violence in their environment means. For me, I never encountered anything like that, so I could not understand why. And I think this added to my fear because I was thinking, not that consciously, but still, that the I think the idea was there is a threat and I'm not even able to understand what that threat is, which means I cannot defend myself because I can't even identify
Mm.
it.
Hmm.
So that probably made me even more anxious.
Yeah, it sounds like when you speak like that, that there was this disconnect, as you said, this incongruence where there was fear in the absence of danger.
Yes.
And so I think you probably were thinking there's something inside of me that I'm afraid that there's a energy or a feeling or vibration inside of me that's creating this fear or this panic that I cannot match or I cannot blame it on the outside environment. You said you
Mm-hmm.
had some level of security in your home environment and your
Yeah.
school.
I think I felt very helpless and stupid in a way because I was not able to see that threat that people were talking about. And so I was thinking, if I'm not able to see that, then it means I'm stupid. And also, I really had this belief that I was not equipped to face the world. And I think it's a message that was never really spoken out loud, but there was this idea that I don't really have the capacity, or I have a capacity for certain things. Like I have a capacity for school that I was allowed to be
Mhm,
good at
mhm,
and expected to be good at, and so that's what I did. But for instance, I was not expected to be good at sports. I was not expected to be good at speaking out loud, being confident. It was, and I was not um, encouraged, I would say, to be that because it was. kind of going against this environment that I was in. So the vision that I had, and that I but it lasted way beyond my childhood, but was this idea that I am somehow a disgusting thing that is not really allowed to be here. So I really had this feeling that I could watch people live life and enjoy it from behind a window, and it was already
Mm.
too much of a, like, of a permission that I was given to just be there and watch other people. I was so the way I saw myself was that I was so kind of so dirty or so not worthy that I should normally not even be allowed to watch other people enjoy life, but someone was kind of generous enough to let me do that. And I had the feeling that I was welcome if I could be used, if I could provide some kind of service. But just me as a being was never enough. But of course, I had not this understanding as a child. I just had a feeling of I'm so ashamed of myself. I feel that I don't have the right to exist, but I could not put words on that feeling, as I later became capable of doing, and that I can now explain it to you.
Mm. You struck me with a couple of observations that you had. You said that there were expectations of you, to be one way or and not another, or be good at or capable of one thing but not another. Who was placing those expectations on you?
I think it's a family thing, like for many generations, like not just my parents, but they they went to school, they went to university, they studied, and then they got jobs that were considered as like a like well regarded. And so it was just logical that their children would, you know if not make them proud, at least not disappoint them by not following the same path. And my grandparents, I don't know all the details of the stories, but they also studied. So it was something that people are expected to do because it's good. And even if it was never openly stated like this, there was, and I could already feel it as a child, some kind of a idea that if you study and you get papers, then in a way, or diploma, in a way, you're kind of better than other people, or you have more capacity, which
Mhm.
is like
Yeah.
someone's worth is not tied to anything, first of all. And then I found that people who didn't study as much as I did were much more capable than me because they learned life instead of learning school.
Mhm.
So there was a hint of elitism, or, but of course it would never be said because we were like, there was also this idea that we are good people, so we never think or talk bad about someone else, or we don't think we are better than other people. But in fact, we do. This kind of a trick that
Mhm. Mhm.
we say it doesn't exist because it exists, basically.
Mm. You I wanted to go back to some language that you used about your belief system as a young woman, as a young girl. And you used some pretty harsh words. You said I felt dirty, ashamed, and not worthy, not even not worthy to exist.
I really, yeah, no, excuse me. Ask.
I'm going to share something with you and with the audience that I've observed in my healing practice with children. Um, I call it a carryover from another generation, another time, perhaps another existence, where a child can be born into adequate circumstances. Can have two parents who love her, can have friends, can have resources, um, can have security and safety. Yet, despite all that external, I would say, evidence of security, inside they feel very insecure, or as you mentioned, feel dirty or unworthy of even living. And so I've observed this, and I'm thinking of a particular client where this child who would want to run away from home, and had this energy, the spirit of almost like escapism, despite having every possible comfort and security in her home environment, in her school environment. And so that's when I noticed. I think uh, I'm a I grew up as a person that did not have all the resources, and I grew up with shame about my circumstance, about my family circumstance, and my education and my thoughts, my belief system before my awakened time, or before my awakening, was that those early formative childhood experiences of lack, of not having enough, of shame, shame around money, how money was earned and spent. There was prostitution in my um, history, my generational history, and so there's a lot of shame. And I believe that because of that external stuff, that external environment, those beliefs were created. And even though I was not that, I still carried the energy of it with me. And so I believe that that was the root of my many, many struggles in this life, was I would say, the earth milieu, the energy, the family, the community that I was born into, carrying all of their burdens and their shames. But as I got older and more mature in my life and in my practice, I realized you can still carry this stuff even when the external environment is idyllic, when all your needs are met, when you're living in a place of comfort. And so I wonder if what you were experiencing was this carryover um, from past generations. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a combination of that, because I think it's very interesting and important that you highlight that many of our, yeah, of unconscious wounds, or heaviness that we carry does not belong to us. It comes from previous generations. And in my situation, it was combined with my experience that I was not completely aware of at the time, and that I got memories of what was happening that came later, when I was ready to receive those memories. But I think like, because when I started to really understand my story, I I looked at all the information that I had, even if it was scarce, but all the information that I had about the previous generations, to see how the same pattern had probably been repeating,
Hmm.
because people repeat patterns from one generation to the other in the hope of understanding it and being able to stop it. And you cannot stop something by repeating it. And that's why sometimes it runs over, like, for centuries, depending on what it is. And so there is, I think it's always a combination of um, the personal circumstances, the social conditioning, and also the lineage, like all that has been transmitted from one generation to the next, and where it's like, in a way, even if it doesn't look like that, it's always an act of love, in the sense that every generation gives their malediction or misery or suffering to the next one, with the hope that the next one will be able to solve this. And I'm saying this because when I started doing ancestor work, like doing some, I don't know, I remember traveling to Southeast Asia. I went to Japan, and there I joined a celebration for the ancestors, and I felt so uncomfortable because even at that time I didn't have the entire understanding of my story, but it was, I was in a tense relationship with my parents, and I was like, okay, how can I feel comfortable and with my entire heart give thanks to the previous generations, when in the moment I feel that I really don't want to have anything to do with
Mhm.
them. And then later on, one of my teachers explained that when we do ancestor work, we don't work with the actual person or people. We work with the wisdom and the love that has been acquired and carried and transmitted from one generation to the next, and we work with archetypes, not with the actual people. And then I started to realize, okay, I can feel the love of my ancestors, and I can genuinely feel it. Like, I can really understand their suffering and how much they hope that at some point someone would bring this to an end. And I also have the conviction that if I chose, I think I chose this incarnation, a bit in a similar way that I chose to be a paramedic. But and it's not, I mean, it's no surprise that I did a job such as paramedic, or that I'm doing now coaching. And so I think I chose this incarnation, this family, those specific circumstances, because I knew that I had the power to stop
Mm.
this. And so I came for that. I think we all choose why we come here, and also because being, I mean, the life on Earth is a crazy good thing. It might take some time to get to the point where we can honestly say that, but we come for that. And when we do ancestor work with that feeling that it's all their love and hope, and not the specific people or what they did to us or what happened to them or the specific circumstances, but it's more the flow of energy, then it becomes something completely different. And now I can honestly ask for help from my ancestors. They, please come with me, like, give me the energy for this, give me your wisdom for this, help me to understand this. and and know that I am safe with them, because that was also another important topic, was safety.
Mhm.
And
You bring up some very interesting kind of thoughts and new belief systems, or I would say aware belief systems about our ancestors and past generations. The way that I've thought about this is when you are a baby, when you're born into this earth school, this earth dimension, all of the people that came before you want to give you something to help you along your journey here, knowing that it's going to be a tough, beautiful journey, right? And so the idea is, I think of it like a little suitcase. We call it baggage. We have a euphemism in the United States that you're carrying a lot of
mm,
baggage. And the idea is that we don't just get that baggage from romantic relationships and friendships and jobs and things like that that have hurt us along the way. We actually come into the world with baggage. We come into the world with, like you said, the belief systems, the ideas, sometimes the energies of past generations where they may not have taken the inner journey, that spiritual journey, that soulful journey to change it, to transform it. I mean, how many times have you heard it said, or have you felt that this is just how the world is, that I don't have the power to change it? And so just imagine how many generations have felt that way, that they just take it and they just go into this world believing that this is just how things are and I cannot change it. I don't have the power to change it. And so I think you're correct, Noemi, when you say there's a hopefulness that if I give you this burden, if I give you this baggage, if I give you my love, but I also give you my pain, that you can be the beacon, you can be the person, you can be the embodiment that changes it for all of us, that transforms it for all of us. And so I think there's this level of awareness, right? There's this idea that I understand it. Like, I think understanding and knowledge, it's kind of like in that academic sphere, where you say, okay, I have the knowledge, I get it. But that is not enough to transform it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge is power in its own sense. It's like maybe a first step, but it's not the key. It's not the key to transformation. So the idea is then there's another level of it. And I believe when we think about levels in this way, they're deeper levels into the soul. Like there's that outer, if you just think of it like the outer shell of you, the embodiment of you that faces the outside world, that is the realm of knowledge. But then there's a inner, like there are deeper levels of awareness, right? Like awarenesses of patterns, of generational cycles. And then you say, "Oh, okay, so this is energy. It's not actual great 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 grandma and great 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 grandpa that are impacting me. It's the energy, it's the essence. This is carried in my DNA. This is the gift that they gave for me." Because when you come into higher awareness, you recognize that the things that don't feel good are actually opportunities. They're actually gifts given to you. Because if you can open that package, if you can transform that energy, you free yourself, not just yourself, but you free up generations backwards and forwards. Like you don't have to carry it on to
Mm-hmm.
your next
Yeah.
generation and theirs. And then those ancestors said, finally, we found someone in our lineage that's willing to do this work. But what is the work? Like, what is that? Because it's not just the understanding. I believe,
Mm.
Noemi, it is feeling. It is
Yes.
allowing yourself to feel it, not to ignore it, not to educate yourself around it, not to rationalize it, not to intoxicate it, not to forget it, not to ignore it, but you must feel it. All of it must be felt. And there is an inherent strength in the being that allows him or herself to feel it. So I
Mm-hmm.
believe that the feelings that we have inside of us, some people would call it the spirit or soul, the essence of our being that feels all of it. That is those feelings are the language of the universe, right? That's the key. That's the key that opens the door, that opens you to this higher realm of existence of being. But
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting because we spoke about this the other day about the idea of trauma. That's a big, big term for anything that can happen to you that traumatizes you, right? That you don't want to feel
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
anymore. And it has all sorts of faces and all sorts of scenarios surrounding it, all sorts of energies. And that we can survive the trauma, right? We can survive whatever happens. So let's just say there's a point in time that something happened. And let's say that something felt horrible, so traumatizing that you never want to feel it again, kind of thing. That you never want
Mm.
to see it, smell it, experience it again. But what happens is we survive that initial trauma, right? Because if we didn't, we'd never go to the therapies and, try to do this inner work. We would just die from the trauma. But most of us,
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah,
survive the
absolutely.
trauma itself, whatever it was that happened. But we feel that whatever that thing was so painful that even the mere memory of it is too much to bear. The memory of it,
Mm-hmm.
the energy
Yeah.
of it. I could survive and feel the trauma itself, but not the feelings, the memories bring of it that has me remember the trauma. And so the idea is I believe our feelings are meant to be felt, no matter how awful they
Mm-hmm.
feel, no matter how awful, that is intentional. Because when something feels that bad and that disgusting and that dirty and that shameful and that guilty, whatever it is, transforming that energy is what actually frees you of it. And that you will feel that feeling until it no longer needs to be felt, meaning that you will feel it until you have actively transformed it. And that's what we don't learn in academics, in the world. We don't
Mm-hmm.
learn anything about this essence of our being. And I think that's what keeps the world suffering, that keeps the engine going, that keeps the racket running, is the fact that we never learn to transform our feelings.
Yeah, I agree. We don't learn that at school, and it's relatively rare to find someone who can teach us that outside of school, because I think I totally agree with you that feelings are meant to be felt, and that's extremely important, because they are an energy. An emotion is an energy, and if it's not felt, if it's not alchemized and transformed, then it stays stuck somewhere in the body, and that's when it creates illnesses or all sorts of problems and just all sorts of suffering. But just feeling a horrible feeling alone with no idea how to transform it, I think can be an additional trauma to the original trauma that generated the feeling. So that's why I think it's really important when we start exploring our own history and exploring those places that seem frightening. It's important to have a guide, to have someone who can like really be there with us and help us not be completely overwhelmed by the feeling, that there is this, that before going to feeling the feeling, there is first a feeling of safety, that I can allow myself to look at that memory or feel that feeling because I am in a safe space where I don't have to take care about anything else, because there is someone who's doing that job of maintaining the space around me safe. Because oftentimes where there has been a trauma, regardless of the type of trauma, then one of the consequences is that because we don't want it to happen again, we are constantly on the lookout. We are always checking our environment. What is happening there? Did that person mean this or that when they spoke to me? Or should I go there? Or maybe this is going to be bad. And the brain is constantly scanning the environment for the next danger. And it
Mm-hmm.
is not in a state where it can, like when we are in that state of constant attention out because there might be a danger somewhere, first of all it raises the level of stress in the body with all the hormones and all that. But the other consequence of that is that the brain is not in a mode where it can access new ideas, new beliefs, new habits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the point, whatever I mean, it can be talking with a friend. So even though I don't think our friends should be our therapist or coach in any way, but it does make one feel good when we can talk with a friend. But I think it doesn't matter the kind of therapy or coaching or activity. It can be any kind of activity, but it's important to be with someone who will be like the kind of the bodyguard, or the one who will check and make sure that we are safe in the environment that we are in, so that our body and our mind can relax, and then we can peacefully look at what happened or feel what we need to feel, and then be guided into transforming this emotion and introducing new beliefs and making it so much easier to adopt them because they are received in a brain that is relaxed and ready to receive. Because our brain will say, okay, that's fine that you tell me we should think that everything is okay, but I don't believe in it for 1 second. And then my job now is to watch what's happening inside, outside, if we don't have like someone to be with us. So
Mm.
safety is a very, and for some people it starts with physical safety. Like it's really difficult to create change if you don't feel safe in the place where you live, or if you don't feel safe in your body, if you feel like your body is your enemy or things like that, then it's hard, it's really hard. So safety is a prerequisite, I think.
Well, Noemi, I do not want to leave our listeners without some tips on this, how to transform this energy. Stay with me and we'll take a little break. And then we're going to look at some practical, useful things, tips that people can take away with them to transform these dense energies. Just stay with me.
Like what you're hearing so far, make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. How would you describe your relationship with money? Did you ever imagine that your deepest feelings and beliefs about money could be preventing you from acquiring all the wealth that you desire? Click the link below in the show notes to learn more about Dr. Nicholas's highly sought after Frequency of Money program to positively transform your relationship with money. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
So, Noemi, before the break, we talked about the energy of all of this, the energy of our feelings, and that it's meant to be felt, and that we don't learn in school or really anywhere in life how to transform these energies, these ancient, often ancestral energies that we carry over into this embodiment, into this lifetime. One thing I wanted to share was actually about the energy of it all. And if we can agree on one thing, I believe is the very first law of thermodynamics that tells us that energy is conserved. It is not created nor destroyed, but it must be transformed. That energy changes state. And we applied this. This is something that I believe that we can learn academically, if you will, from the place of understanding, is that we apply this law of energy to energies of the planet, of all the energies of the planet. But we don't think of ourselves as energetic, so we don't necessarily apply that first law of thermodynamics to us as energetic beings. And so to me, if we can just think about us as not just a physical person, just like we don't think of the world maybe just as a physical place, but we also know that there's wind and there's solar, that there's vibrations on this planet. Sound, just as we speak, it's a wave, it's a vibration. That the cells of our body, if you get down to the very core of them, there's a nucleus and there's an electron spinning in this vast amount of what we call empty space, which I don't believe is empty, but space. That we're mostly, some people say hot air. We're at the very core of us, we're energy. And so if we can apply that same first law of thermodynamics to us as human beings, I believe we can learn how to transform the energy of it. So this is one of the things that I like to share. It's the idea that if you can come to the, I would say, understanding or awareness that the things that you think, that is energy, that carries a vibration. And it can be felt, right? Because as human beings, we say, oh, I know that person doesn't like me, or I know that person does
Hmm.
like me. Just very simplistic. We feel their thoughts. We can feel it if someone approves of us versus disapproves of us by sensing it. They don't have to say anything. We can feel it when we don't see the person. It can be over the phone, it can be over an email. We can feel it. We can feel tone. We can feel the thought, the energy of it. And so then if we go another level, we think about our belief systems. Those two are energy. So that's the good news, right? That if my thoughts, if my ideas, if my beliefs, if my language, if there's energy, then there's a possibility that me as an individual being, I have the power within me to transform it. Because it's energy after all. At its very core, it's energy, so it can be transformed. So then the question becomes, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? And most people will feel like they do therapy and talk and writing. Maybe they express themselves through art or whatever their mode of self-expression, but it doesn't necessarily transform it. And this is what I believe that we haven't learned well. And perhaps this is why I created the Be Conscious podcast and the work that I do and the work that you're doing in life coaching. The idea is, if everything is a vibrational frequency, and these vibrations can be measured in us, there's a great body of work done by the late Dr. David Hawkins, where he measured in the muscle the vibration of different emotions in the body. He called it the map of consciousness, and in that, the highest vibrational frequency that we can reach is what we call enlightenment. Like we're free of all of these lower emotions from time to time. And then the lowest frequency on that scale is shame, which is a frequency that I vibrated and resonated at for much of my life. The lowest possible vibrational frequency measured in human beings. And then somewhere in the middle, you know, we have all the other lower and higher emotions that you can think of: the guilt, the fear, the courage, the acceptance, the joy, love, so on and so forth. And
Mm.
we have the capacity within our being to experience all of it, the whole range of vibration. And so the idea that I like to talk about is the transformation of it. Now, sometimes this requires more than words, but meditations can help. Other types of energy healing and all of its modalities can help. It depends what you're receptive to. And then there's this idea of a higher level of consciousness that you can bring yourself to. And I believe the surest way to raise a vibration out of fear, out of lack, out of guilt, out of shame, out of scarcity, out of what we call pain, is that energy of gratitude. Now, we've heard a lot of talk about gratitude, like sometimes it's a fake it till you make it thing. Just say what you're grateful for, and then maybe one day you'll believe what you're grateful for. There's the attitude of gratitude. We've heard that before. And it's kind of gotten so used that people maybe don't trust it or discount it. But the energetic frequency of gratitude is real. It is something that can be measured. And it's not something that you should do or should be grateful for, but it's feeling grateful. And I think I guess a positive, attribute to this feeling of gratefulness is that typically we feel grateful for things that we already have. We feel grateful maybe that we have a roof over our head, or that we have friends or loved ones or family, or that we have gifts like intellect or whatever, athletic, whatever our skills and gifts are. I mean, we can feel grateful because we know that we have it. Like it's almost like a very present type of energy. But then it comes to the things that you don't yet have. So maybe you don't have security and peace. Maybe you don't have what you feel like is enough money. Or maybe you don't feel like you have support or safety or security. How can you be grateful for those things? Because if we can feel grateful for what we have yet to experience, to me, that is the key of transforming any dense energy. So how do we be grateful for what we don't have? What we want, but what we don't yet have?
Yes, the way I see it is, because I agree with you that gratitude is a super high energy, and it can transcend anything, but it's difficult to, like, when you force it, it's not gratitude anymore. And so so the way I work is always with the body, because this is where all the answers are. And as you said before, we feel things. We feel if the person in front of us likes us or not. We feel if this is a place where we should be or not. And we feel like we literally, this is the the most powerful and most basic communication is the energy that we exchange with other people around us, and also the feelings that we feel inside our body. So the work is to understand, when I feel this, what does it mean? What is the message of this feeling, of this emotion? If I feel fear, is this inner feeling of fear something that is really relevant, because there's a car coming very fast at me and I should not stay in the middle of the road? Or I do I feel fear because I want to ask something from someone and I'm not sure how they're going to receive my ask? These are two different types of fear, and if you can identify and understand the message of every feeling and emotion, then you can start to use it, because as you said, it's an energy. So you can start using the energy and transforming it. And what is like the fastest way is really to always bring back your body to a feeling of safety and relaxation, because this is the feeling that you will have when all your desires are realized. Like when you have the money that you want, when you have the relationship that you want, when you have the job that you want, when you have the pain-free body that you want, you will just feel at peace and relaxed, and yes, grateful, in not necessarily in a super ecstatic way, but just like your body will be appreciative of this beautiful life that you're experiencing. So
Can I ask
mhm,
you, just you said about the
yeah.
relaxation. I just wanted to go into that a little
Mm.
bit more. Can you share with us what you might help someone with to come into that state of relaxation? Like, what are tips to come into that state?
So there are plenty. My favorite one, because it's like the most efficient one, is the vagus nerve stimulation. Like you can do this by, like, you can just Google it and you'll find on YouTube like plenty of people explaining how to stimulate the vagus nerve, because it's the nerve that is responsible for basically for feeling relaxed. So you can do that with eye movement. You can do that with tilting your head in one side or the other side. There are plenty of options. So that I would really recommend, because it's quick. Like if you just, for instance, if you stand tall, look straight in front of you, and then without turning your head, turning just your eyes to the maximum to the left for 1 minute, and then to the maximum to the right for 1 minute. This is one way of activating this nerve. So it's super simple. You
Hmm.
can do it anywhere, and you will immediately feel the not immediately, maybe it will take you 30 seconds, but I mean, in the range of 1 minute, you can feel your body relax. And for the work to be really effective, it's important to combine this with the understanding of what generated the feeling. Did you start feeling anxious because someone looked at you in a certain way, or because you thought of your stepfather, or because you got a nasty comment on your Instagram? Like to trace when, what was the trigger for that feeling, and then if possible to go even deeper than that. After, of course, after you've relaxed your body, then you can start thinking about it in a more in a clearer way. And when is the first time that I felt like this? Maybe I felt like that when my aunt was yelling at me when I was a kid, and I felt so terrified. And then because my boss made a comment, it just kind of put me
Triggered.
back into the
Yeah.
past, and I felt like I
Hmm.
was 6 year old facing my aunt. And so when we can understand the root of the feeling, if it's in our experience, if it comes from past generations, as we were saying before, that's a bit more complex, but it will be freed anyway when we relax the body. But when we have the intellectual understanding combined with the understanding of the messages that come from the body, then it's like working from the head and working from the gut. And when you combine this, then you understand what is happening and you know how to transform it.
Mm. Can oh, if I can share, I think when what brings us into the body, one of my favorite tips or my favorite go-tos is really just focusing on the breath,
Yeah.
because it is like core to us. And so if you could be in the middle of traffic and road rage, or there could be something actively happening, where you may not have time to do all this deep level of introspection or to stand in a certain way or to be listening to something. But the idea is I can always, as long as I'm living, come back to my breath. I can always narrow my thoughts just to two words in coordination with my breath. And I think that is a sure way of bringing you into calm. And that's, of course, predicated on the idea that you can come down and focus to your breath. They come in to the body, as you stated, and to break that thought pattern or that thought cycle. And you pick your two words. I am, 1, 2, in, out, humdrum, whatever your two words are. And that's in coordination with your breath. If you can get to that, no matter where you are, what time it is, what the situation is, that has the power to transform that circumstance. And the idea is because it starts, I think what we're both getting at, Noemi, is that it starts with you. It starts within you. The external circumstances, the outside life is always going to be happening. But the idea, if you will, is who are you inside of that circumstance of life? Who are you being? We are called human beings, not human doers.
Yes.
So what we've mostly focused on is what can I do or what did
Mm.
I do wrong or this, that. It's about doing. Like if something isn't showing up in my life or doesn't feel right, then I haven't done enough or I haven't done something or I'm not good enough. It's something that I'm doing. And I believe there comes a point where you have to focus on how you are or who you are being. What is my inner state of being? Because that is really what is creating your external circumstance.
Mhm.
That is we each of us creates our own reality. And where does that creation come from? It comes from within us. It comes from our belief systems. It comes from if you will, our education. It comes from our thoughts. It comes from our fears. All of that comes from within us is projected outside. And I kind of like I had a very early podcast with um, a very wise person who used this idea of the movie projector. And I love this analogy because the idea is if you think of an old movie house where there's a projector with a light, and that light, I would say, projects the images on the screen in front of everyone. And the idea is think of yourself as the projector, like it is you that is the projector.
Mhm.
And that light that projects out onto the outer screen is from your heart. That is what your heart resonates. So that light comes from the soul of you, from the heart of you. And then if you want to change what is being projected out onto that screen or out into the physical world, what would you do? Would you go and make markings and cut up and burn the screen? Or would you change what is being projected out from the inside of that projector? Change the story, change the energy, change what's being projected from that light aperture. And so it all comes down to you, like changing, shifting, transforming, transmuting the energies of you. And when that changes, when you change, when you elevate and shift and raise your vibration, then the light that comes from your heart that projects out into your physical reality also begins to change.
Mhm. Yes, and I think it's really important to highlight that the change happens because we are kind to ourselves. Because changing and transforming those emotions is a powerful tool, but it's really important to remember that it should never be used as an excuse for a self-attack, or to, as you said before, everything that we feel has the right to be felt, deserves to be felt. And when we repress an emotion, if we want to rush through the process, like if, for instance, if we feel grief and we just want to not feel that bad and dismiss it and push it aside, then we don't respect the emotion, and it will not feel
Mhm.
comfortable in the body. And something, when the process of the natural evolution of the natural cycle of an emotion is cut or suppressed, then we can fake feeling good, but it will not be a sustainable change. And what I've noticed when you were asking about like uh, tips and what is the fastest way to change what we project outside, because I think this image that you gave is very helpful to understand how it works. And so the more we can um, celebrate our awareness, our victories, the faster the change happens. And I say that because oftentimes, and I've been doing that myself also for so many years, that I would notice an old pattern playing out again, and then I would beat myself up and be like, how come I'm so stupid, I'm again in that situation, and I know it and I knew it, and now it's happened, and now I'm feeling even worse than before. And that is never going to lead to change.
Mhm.
But what leads to change is to say, okay, I noticed this, and I I really thank my mind for making me aware of that old pattern. And please, my mind, next time make me aware even quicker and even quicker, so that there comes a point where I see it from far and I'm like, haha, I recognize you, the old pattern. Guess what? I see you. I'm not
Mhm.
even going there. And through self celebration and appreciation of the capacity of our mind to do that, like to be, because it's not that easy to become aware of yourself and what is happening inside of you. So we have minds that have that capacity. So to thank the mind for that is the fastest way to change. And then it becomes like a kind of a game. Yeah,
Mhm.
I used to be that person. I see it now. I'm not that person anymore.
Exactly. And I think what you're getting at is, she said being kind to yourself. And I think it's also forgiveness of yourself,
Hmm.
allowing yourself some
Yes.
grace that this is not easy. None of us are taught how to do this. It's something that comes from often a very difficult journey, maybe what we call a midlife crisis or a breakdown, or some life altering event that brings us to this place. It doesn't feel good. And again, we've never been taught, but now I think there's an opening in I would say the fabric of humanity.
Mm.
There's an awareness that's coming to a threshold of consensus that yes, you know, my power is not held, or my the power of my ascension, if you will, the power of my transformation, my life is not held in any institution, whether religious or secular, or any other person, or any amount of money, or any material thing, but the power lies within me.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Well, well, no, Noemi, we have come to the hour, and I would love if you could share with the audience how they can reach you, if they'd ever like to work with you.
Best way I would say is on LinkedIn. and then on Instagram, and then on my website. These are probably the three main doors. And I really like to have a personal conversation with people. So don't be afraid of sending me like a direct message, whatever the question or the curiosity that you may have. I'm always the person replying. It's not someone on my team, it's me. And I really enjoy that. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And I will have all of your links in the show notes.
Yes. Oh, and before I forget, if someone in your audience comes to me mentioning this podcast, then I have a 10% discount on my services for them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Noemi. And I will also put that in the show notes.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for taking this inner journey with us today. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious. Now, if you love this episode and if today's message resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review the Be Conscious podcast. This helps listeners just like you to find intriguing and transformative content. I also want to know what inspired you and what conscious topics you would like to hear more about. And if you want, you can share those thoughts and questions with me at info@susannicholas.org.
Thanks for listening to the Be Conscious podcast with author, TEDx international speaker, and conscious coach, Dr. Susan Nicholas. Be sure to connect with her to stay up to date with her latest news and works. Learn more about her conscious speaking platform at susannicholas.org/speaking. Stay tuned for the next thought-provoking episode. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious.